guys, here come the dollies. They got fresh sinkers, hot coffee, and the sweetest smile.
Welcome back to the Clubmobile, everybody. We're so happy to have you joining us today.
Hi, everyone.
We're thrilled to be sitting down with Tim Pitts, who is the author of When I Look Back, the War Letters of Fitje Pitts, his lovely mother, who was also a Red Cross woman during the war. Tim, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Tim, we're so glad to have you joining us. Why don't you tell us a bit about your mom and how she came to join the Red Cross and what kind of propelled her into that desire to serve in that capacity?
Perfect. I don't think it ever would have dawned on my mother not to serve in some capacity during the war. In fact, her role model was her father, who actually served in France during World War I twice. Once with the Harvard Surgical Unit, which was a volunteer unit, and then after the Americans got in the war, he joined the American Army and went back again. So she originally actually tried to become a WAC, and she was turned down because they found a heart murmur. So next step was Red Cross, which is actually
Mm.
sort of interesting because it was more difficult to get into the Red Cross than it was to become a WAC. But her father, this well-known surgeon in Providence, Rhode Island, undoubtedly knew the surgeon that gave her, or the doctor that gave her a physical up there, and instructed him that his daughter was to pass the exam. So she did,
Mm.
and she passed the exam and went into the Red Cross and in early 1943. She was not the only one in her family that enlisted. She had a brother, Herman Pitts, who also enlisted, although he never did go overseas. So she was the only one in that side of the family that went. But that's basically how it happened.
Wow. The
Mm.
Red Cross requirements were very strict. I mean,
Yes.
we've dug into this quite a bit where,
Yeah.
I mean, there was a specific age gap. You had to be educated, you had to hold a job before you joined, and they really put them through a lot of physical training as well, which is, you wouldn't think that women serving, Coca-Cola and coffee and donuts would need to go through that much physical training, but it's incredible to me that they did.
Mm.
Well,
Yeah.
she was even taken to FBI headquarters at the time and taught how to shoot certain weapons, including a Thompson submachine gun. Which she had a brother that was significantly younger than him. And in one of her letters, she writes home and said, Johnny is going to be so jealous. Tell him I got to shoot.
No
I
matter
love
what, the
that.
sibling rivalry prevails, huh?
Yes,
Yeah, I was
it
about to say
always
that.
does. Yes.
It always prevails. How did the idea for the book happen? Was it a case of you found your mother's letters from wartime, or was it something that your mum was always openly talking about as you grew up?
It's actually a really good story. My mother talked about it. We were well aware, and I don't know exactly when, but we were well aware of the fact that she had been in Europe during the war, and we knew she was with the Red Cross. Um, but and as she got older, my mother died on Halloween morning in 2008. And she had been in Alzheimer's care for a couple of years before she died.
Mhm.
Before that, we would get her talking at times, and I tried everything I could to try to get her to write a book, and even would interview her. But and if you notice in the book, there's a first chapter. One of the first chapters is her memory. She started to write
Mm.
things, and then it just fell by the wayside. So after she died, or after we moved her into Alzheimer's care, we collected all of her stuff, boxes that she has saved, and so on and so forth. And they made it to my brother's apartment in Baltimore. And I was there visiting one time, and he was going someplace. And I asked him if he'd mind if I rummaged around in all of the boxes, and he said no. So I started rummaging around, and I came up and found them. Now keep in mind, she died in 2008, and I never found them until 2017.
Wow.
So
Wow.
all these letters were there, and I started going through them, and I said, "My gosh, this is a treasure trove of history."
Mm.
So I got all of the letters. I put them in chronological order, and I read all of them. Now, I should hasten to say, reading my mother's letters is like transcribing Sanskrit. Her handwriting, I knew her handwriting, so it was a little bit easier, but there were some things that I really did stumble over. Um, but I read them and I realized there really was something here. So I assembled a team of some of my former students and paid them to help me transcribe the letters.
Mm.
And then
Wow.
I would go back and check what they had
Mhm.
transcribed and put them all in order. And then once they were in order and I could look at them, I then decided to write the history between the chapters. And the chapters are essentially either the bases they start with her training and then go to the various bases, the voyage over on the Queen Mary to England, and then all of her stops between East Anglia, London, then East Anglia, then France, Belgium, and Villacoublay in France. Uh, so I did the research and wrote those up, and then almost a year to the day after I found the letters, I self-published the book. And it was amazing doing all the work. I managed to find people, children of people who she had served with. I did research and found all kinds of really fascinating stuff. So it was a labor of love for a year, but then there's the book.
Mhm.
Yeah.
It's a wonderful book too. I enjoyed the chapters most where she is so close to where I grew up, the chapters where she's in Felixstowe
Yes.
and having the opportunity to learn about what it was like during the war there, because obviously I was born in 95. We moved there around 97, I believe, 98. It's always been very quiet and a very peaceful place. And to know that there was minimal wartime chaos despite the American invasion, as it's so labeled. I really enjoyed reading about her experience of essentially living near my home.
I should probably tell you that when my wife and I were there, we had rented a car and drove up from London and then spent
Mhm.
almost the entire time we were in England on this trip in East Anglia. Well, having read the letters, I had to go over and see Felixstowe. So we
Mhm.
did. And the building what was a hotel at the time, and for all I know, it was being used for R&R of some sort for
Yeah,
American troops and stuff like that. It's now a high-end condominium type of building.
it
And
is. Yeah.
we spoke to a gentleman who was there who said, "Look, come on over. I'd love to show you around and stuff." And we did look at some of it. The funny part of the story is the I can't remember if it was the first or second time she had gone. Um, she got down there, and all of a sudden, a guy named Ed Russell, who was the oh God, adjutant on the base, she called him
Mhm.
Adge, traveled down there and said, I didn't think you probably ought to be down here all by yourself. You'd be lonely." My mother had several what she told her parents were special friends. They were clearly her lovers during the war. I don't know if Ed Russell was one of them or not, but I have
Mm.
my suspicions.
Yeah,
He was a very
maybe a little
attractive sort of
bit.
guy and apparently a very
Yeah,
effective adjutant on the base with the 95th.
yeah,
And the drive down is absolutely lovely. But in the
it
town, as you
is.
say, is sort of this great little seacoast town.
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
Yeah.
really, really nice. It sort of borders it's all in like one big line of coastal because you've got
Yes.
Felixstowe and you've got Lowestoft and then you've got Great Yarmouth across the way, which was used as a air point for a lot of the bomb groups. Great Yarmouth was Splasher 6 for the 100th
Yes.
bomb group. So it's been really fascinating for me to see my home through different eyes, especially being so far away from it as I have been for so many years. Did your mother enjoy her time there? Was this her favorite posting, or do you
Oh
think she
gosh,
enjoyed
that's
London
hard to
or perhaps
say.
France more? Yeah.
She loved East Anglia.
Mm.
And in reading the book and reading about the people that she met in East Anglia, these were people that were clearly really she was very close to. And in fact, after she transferred out of 95th Bomb Group, and went down to Ninth Bomber Command. She seemed to make sort of regular trips back up to see everybody. She'd go up for one reason or another, or people would come down to see her. And the same was true, I think, in some of the other bases she was on. So yeah, she loved England, loved being up in Horham and Eye and Diss and up in that area. But I really think there was everything about the UK that she just loved. Her trip to
Mm.
Scotland, and at one point she went to Ireland, but I think that was after the war was over.
Mm-hmm.
Um, she enjoyed it thoroughly. Now, I should also say that if you read her letters, you find out that she loved France too. And once
Yeah.
she got to Belgium, some of her favorite people were the nuns in a convent in Saint Trond. So
Mm-hmm.
was there a favorite? It's hard to say, except she always loved England and always wanted to return to England, which she finally did after my father died.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What was that like, that first sort of reunion or the first time that she returned?
Um, well, that was just to England. When my
Mm-hmm.
brother and I took her back uh, to a trip, we took her to we said we were going to take back, just remember the places you've been, Mom, and we will go and visit them in England. So we actually visited 9th Bomber Command, or the general area around
Hmm.
St. Mark's or Mark's Hall. And then
Mm-hmm.
we went to where the 91st Bomb Group was in Bassingbourn, if I remember correctly. But we spent most of our time where the 386 Bomb Group was located, and that was in Great Dunmow.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
I think the favorite group in a lot of ways was probably the 386. She was with them for about 13 months, where she was with the 95th for, I don't know, 4.5 or 5 months. I think Bomber Command was another 5 months. And then 91st Bomb Group was only a couple of weeks
Yeah.
before she
Right.
transferred down to the 386th. Um, Now I'm not sure where this question got started, but anyway, she saw, put it this way, she saw a great deal of England. Oh, when we took her back, we spent most
Mhm.
of the time with the 386. Interestingly, she never mentioned the 95th Bomb Group to us. We had no idea, even while we
Okay.
were there. And I started to think about it later after she died, and I realized that was a major omission. When she was there for 4.5 months, they lost 30 B-17s. That's 300 guys.
Mhm.
Statistically speaking, out of the 300, 150 were dead. The
Yeah.
rest were missing. They could have been POWs. They could have been picked up by the resistance and gotten out. But once an American flyer was smuggled out of France, they couldn't fly again. Uh,
Mhm.
to be shot down again, there was a chance that they would give away the resistance network and all that kind of
Right,
stuff. So
right.
they never did. So these were people that even though she was there for a reasonably short period of time, she would have recognized or known most of them. And I'm sure for a 26-year-old girl, basically, um, to experience that kind of loss would have been horrifying, and it
Yeah.
probably weighed on her very badly. Furthermore, as a Red Cross volunteer running the clubs, so she was a donut dolly. One of the things they did was go down to the airfield and sweat in the flights and then serve coffee and donuts before the men went to be debriefed.
Right, right.
Mhm.
And so she would have seen the people coming off the planes that at times were dead or horribly wounded. And when we get to it a little later, talk about her well after the war and what she was like in post-war America. I think I think the experience weighed on her to the degree that she probably suffered from some degree of PTSD for most, probably most of her life after she got home.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And I just suspect the 95th might have been too painful for her to talk about.
Yeah. That would
Yeah,
make
it makes
sense,
sense that
truly.
it's easier to omit it than to
Yeah.
Yeah.
force
Well,
yourself to live through that
they were in the
again.
same bomb group as the 100th and the 93rd. And
Mhm.
all three of those groups took horrific beatings during the
Yeah.
war, especially the
Yeah.
100th.
Hmm.
Mhm.
Absolutely.
Yes,
Yeah, it does make sense for her, mentally to omit it because it was possibly too painful to talk about, too painful to mention, or even to go over there to relive it, which is
Yeah,
incredibly sad.
it
yes,
is.
it is.
Um,
I know that it's
but I
rough
think,
sometimes when we read about it. You read a book
yeah.
and you read an airman's book and he talks about, 50 of my buddies didn't come back.
Yeah,
And
Mm,
they have to live with that for the rest of their lives. And sometimes it doesn't dawn on you that the women that were over there too saw these damaged planes,
sure.
landing, and
yeah.
they're, the boys, that's what they were. They were young boys that were maybe at the Clubmobile truck in the morning or in the briefing room smiling and joking and drinking their coffee with her in the morning, or coming back gashed up and full of blood, or maybe
Dead.
they're dead,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
she's absorbing that and taking that in just as much as the man that's standing next to her. That's going to stick. And sometimes it doesn't dawn on people that the women that were there suffered just as much, just in a different way.
Yeah, they did. And she did.
Hmm.
I know that it was terribly difficult for her to talk about it. My father served in the Third Army, and there were things that he did tell us, but most of
Right.
which he didn't. We never found that until we found his letters too. So
Right.
we have a treasure trove of history and family
Mm,
letters.
Yeah.
In fact, my brother is transcribing a bunch that go back all the way to 1809.
wow. That's
Wow.
amazing.
So it pieces together the family history one way or the
Hmm.
other. But in my mother's case, this is probably the most detailed accounting we have of any of the family members that I'm aware of.
It really is such an incredible thing to discover. One of the questions I had was, how do you think she would feel about her story being sought out now, 80 plus years separated from what she
Yeah.
experienced?
My guess is she'd be horrified. My mother
As
was
as
not one
most
that
mothers
liked,
are when their children start
Mhm.
talking about them. Yeah.
well,
Yeah.
my mother was always careful about, she didn't like people talking about her and she didn't like, all of that kind of stuff. Whereas her first son, which is me, always liked all the attention I could get. So, why not? Um, I don't think she would have probably permitted me to do this had I found him while she was alive, but I have
Yeah.
no way of knowing.
Mm.
And the reason I did it, even knowing that, is that what these, letters home can represent the first pass of history, basically. Letters home and what a reporter sees on a scene. It's when you really get into these things years later and start to deconstruct and put it all back together again and see where each episode fits in her story that it becomes fascinating. And these I could envision. In fact, the book was used at one point in time in a class at the University of Texas, and I had would love to have seen it used in colleges that were teaching women's studies, um, because this is a woman that she was in a family in Providence, Rhode Island. Her father was sort of a strict, no nonsense surgeon, and grew up in a very proper environment and all that kind of stuff. And then she's out there meeting this incredible group of people that she never, ever would have met on her own had she
Right.
just stayed where she was. And so one would think it would change her worldview, and I suppose to a degree it probably did. It would probably give her a greater feeling of just other people, other cultures, other that sort of stuff, which it did. So the fact that these letters really were important to history, I think, is a given. Whether or not she would have seen that as a part of history or more just her talking about herself, which she hated to do, I don't know. But
Mm.
nonetheless, she wasn't here to stop me, so I did it anyway.
As any child would, mum isn't telling me no, so that means yes.
Yes, that's
Yeah.
right.
Pretty
Exactly.
Exactly.
much. Yes.
Mhm. Yeah. I love that. It's very cheeky. I love it.
Well, that's what we learned to be after a while.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, yeah, you gotta be. How how did she feel when she returned home? What was post-war life like for her?
Oh boy, you just opened up Pandora's box with this one. Go on
Yeah. Because
forever.
there's a moment when we were reading that I could see her current life and her past life kind of
Yeah,
crash into each other. And it's
Yeah.
that little moment where she asks her family to please wait for her to have
yep,
Thanksgiving dinner.
yep,
And they say they're
Mm,
going to, and she walks in the door and they finished eating and she
yep.
starts to cry. And it's the moment where you could see her past and her present just kind of they meet head to head.
Colliding.
They
Yeah.
meet head to head, and that's the minute where she has to decide which way she's going to continue her life, basically. And it's just such an interesting way to enter
mm,
back into what was her life and how do you carry on?
Well, it was fascinating because she came home, sailed home, arrived on, I think I said it was November 25th, if I remember correctly, which was
Hmm.
mm.
actually 2 or 3 days after Thanksgiving that year, but they were holding Thanksgiving and they were going to hold the meal for her. She
Right,
got to Boston. There was nobody there to pick her up, so she had to gather together all her stuff and get to a train station and made it back to Providence. There was nobody there to pick her up, so she got a cab and went up to the front door, and that was it.
right,
Her war was over to a degree, but she was
Mm,
incredibly restless. I mean, face it, this is a woman that had been traveling and had by herself for 30 months. She had been
yeah,
in, I don't know, a half a dozen or more countries all over Europe. She had seen horrifying things. If you read her letter written May 16th, 1945, about driving down to Czechoslovakia, I mean, I look
yeah.
at that and I say, oh my God,
right,
this was an incredible story. So now she's come home to an America that has changed, but not changed its attitude towards women. The
Mm,
women that are at work back in those days, their husbands come home, all of a sudden they're back in the house and having babies and being sure dinner's cooked on time and all that kind of stuff.
yeah,
It had to be very, very difficult for my mother. In fact, at one point she went to visit a sick male friend who in his apartment, and her father found out and berated her because she had gone to a single man's apartment by herself. And
yeah.
her story was, she said, my God, Dad, I've been with over 1 million men by myself for the last 30 months. How the hell is that going to get anybody in trouble?
Yeah, I was
But
like, yeah.
so she left there and went out and visited her friend Martha Brush, was her assistant at Ninth Bomber Command in Ohio. And they both decided to go down to Washington, D.C., and they did. And my mother ended up working for the Red Cross for another few months down there before she called it quits and went back. Then at some point, first, I ought to say that my parents were distant second cousins that knew each other before the war.
Mm,
I don't know that there was a romantic issue at all
right.
before the war. My father was still married, although in the process of getting divorced.
Hmm.
Um, and I know he and my mother got together on several occasions. But when they finally got together and got married, I look back on it and say this was a marriage that was going to be difficult right from the start.
Right.
She was very well educated. She was a Smith graduate. She had done a lot of things that were had to do with intellect. My father was from a very old, very socially prominent family in Baltimore, Maryland. Their idea of success wasn't based on level of education, it was based on your pedigree. And as a
Mm,
Southern family, and Baltimore back in those days was about as Southern as Savannah, where I live now.
mm,
Um, Woman was not going to work. She was going to have babies. She was going to do this, that, and the other. And
right.
my mother, in a lot of ways, she had run her own business. She had to figure out currency. She had to do all of this stuff and came back to a husband, just assumed that, she was a woman. What can you do?
yeah.
And I don't mean to make it sound like it was a awful situation, but at times it
Right.
must have been very, very difficult for her.
Right, right.
Hmm.
And I think she went to her grave remembering what it was like. In fact, at one point in time, I told her that I thought she truly lived twice. Once when she got away from her father, and once when and again when her father, my father died.
Mm.
Mm.
He always used to say, for instance, when I die, you'll have enough. This is when he was sick. You'll have enough money after I die. Maybe you'll finally get that trip to Europe you always wanted, because he
Oh
never
my God.
wanted to go back. I
Right.
think she was 56 when he died. I think she went just about every year until 2 years before she died,
Wow.
2 years
Mm.
before she died.
Yeah.
She loved to travel. She loved to do
Mm.
things. She loved to take classes and all that kind of stuff. So she made it work, made her marriage work, but it wasn't very easy at all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It must have been so jarring to go from being so independent for all that time during the war, especially as a woman. And you
Yeah.
see her be put in charge of all these things in the aero club. She's the person that everyone goes to. She's training the new girls. She is helping the girls that are homesick. And then she ends up coming home and being expected to be put back in the place that she was in initially. She's
It,
sort
it,
of put back in this hierarchy of she's no longer in charge. She's now
yeah, no,
again
she
someone's
very
daughter.
definitely wasn't in charge.
No, your
And you
job
all,
is to keep house and raise the kids
Yeah.
and you know.
the whole idea of having what you all have, you can have a husband if you do, you can have children, you can have a job, a career, whatever you want.
Right.
But things are very different than they were 80 years ago. And
Yeah.
and now my mother, I should also say that my mother, and this began to materialize, I believe, in the late 50s. My mother was a pretty bad alcoholic,
Mm.
especially through the 60s. And I've now looking back after reading the letters and really sort of looking through her life through a different set of eyes. I think it was partly due to, as I said, PTSD, which I'm almost
Yeah.
positive was an issue. And I think it was
Absolutely.
just this was a woman that could have been a teacher. In reading the book, her ability to witness the human condition and write about people and her descriptions of things are really the kind of thing that you would want a good journalist to have. She could have been a writer. She could have been a lot of things. And yet she had to take care of a bunch of miscreant kids like me. I think, and believe me, I can remember one time when I can't remember how old I was, probably 14 or 15, when she was now a foot shorter than me, stuck a finger in my chest and said, I just hope I live long enough to be a burden to you.
It's what every mother hopes for, Tim.
Well, she was
I'm
never a
gonna
burden to me, but
bring it
then again,
back.
I left Baltimore and that was my brother's problem.
Yeah, bye. I'm out.
I
But
can't how many times my mother would say, I hope you have a daughter just like you.
Yeah, my mother told me that, and
I hope you
my
have
daughter
kids just
is.
like you. And I'm like, well, what's that supposed to mean? I think I'm pretty cool. I think I'm pretty okay.
That's the thing. My mom, I think my mother said that to me in moments of anger, and now I have
Yeah.
a daughter that is exactly like me, and I'm like, this is great. What was she talking about?
and
I'm having a
occasionally
great time.
you'll catch
Mm.
yourself saying something to your children that say, "Oh God, that's something my mother would have said."
I've done it so many times, Tim, where I feel like I've left my body and I've gone,
Really,
oh no, be
that's not
I
quiet.
really
know. I say things and I go, oh God, I open my mouth and my mother comes out.
Mother comes out.
Oh,
well.
Yeah,
So,
it's quite
we
jarring.
it's like I said, we would get snippets of things, and we were able to piece together bits and pieces of this.
hmm.
And even despite her quirky behavior at times, and despite all that, it was fun to get her talking about any of that kind of stuff.
Mhm.
It really and truly was. So,
Did she
and
have
she
a
did.
favorite memory of her time in the Red Cross? Was there one moment that she constantly talked about, or one that she labeled that was her favorite memory of a horrible time during the war?
There were stories that she would tell and then laugh, but I don't like, for instance, the time she was driving a truck through London.
Mm.
Or she had a driver, a guy named oh gosh, I can't remember his name off the top. His last name was Rudner.
Yeah.
And they were driving through London, and a but they looked over the Thames, and a buzz bomb was coming up beside them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he started to speed up, and she said, "What are you doing?" And he said, "Well, I'm going to try to outrun it." And she said, "No, don't be a fool. Stop the car." And he stopped the car, and it went up a couple of hundred yards and hit a building. And then
Mm.
they just kept going. She said there was no point in stopping. There were plenty of people there, and they didn't stop. So she would
Mm.
tell stories like that, um,
Yeah.
but which were designed to entertain kids, you know.
Right.
Right.
But she didn't talk about a whole lot of other stuff. Now, we did
Mhm.
take her back to France one time, and that really, unfortunately, her mind was slipping at the time, but you could see that there was a real affinity for Baron Seurat and Beaumont Suaz and all that with the 386 bomb group. She loved those people too. So occasionally she'd talk about bits and pieces of it, but I never remember her saying she had a favorite piece.
Right. Yeah.
Now, I will also, there's a photograph that never made it to the book. I don't know if you guys have ever encountered a fellow named Fano Suarez.
No,
He
never.
is he's a Spaniard. He lives in Spain someplace.
Hmm.
And one day out of the blue, I had got a email from him with a picture of my mother in Paris on
No,
VJ
Gabby, we
Day.
have.
Do
He's
you
the
have
one that
that?
sent us, he's the one that sent us through Facebook um all of those Red Cross pictures.
Well,
Oh,
she is
yes.
standing in a crowd out in front of the Red Cross, the Rainbow Red Cross Club in Paris, as opposed
Hmm.
to the one
Yeah.
in London, surrounded by GIs holding a paper that says "Japs quit."
I think we have that.
It
We
We
is
might
have that
have that photo.
saved.
Yes.
it's
Hmm.
a priceless photograph.
Yeah.
All the times I've been to Paris and the time we took her to Paris, you would have thought she would have mentioned that she had been there
Yeah.
for DJ Day, but she never did.
I remember the name did ring a bell
That might
until
have
you
even made
said
it into our VJ Day edit.
it
It
did.
did. And
It
because
did.
I
And I
sent
might have
you
even seen
something
it.
that
I might
said
have even seen it in the museum when I was in New Orleans in October
I
Yeah.
was told
at
it
the
was in,
end of the Pacific campaign exhibit. It might have been
yeah.
one of those. I have to look now. I have to go back through my pictures and see if it's there.
Mm.
Well, one of my friends here, whose mother was a donut dolly, in fact, she was one of the first women into Ohrdruf. She
Hmm.
got there right 2 hours after Eisenhower, Patton, and Bradley left. She drove in her truck, and her description is just gut-wrenching.
Mm.
But in fact, Susan, her daughter, and I write women articles, occasional articles down here
Hmm.
called "Women at War." They have to be women that were in war zones, and those were
Mm.
two of the stories. That picture was probably taken by a military photographer. I kept
Yeah.
hoping that it had
Yeah.
been taken by Life, but no. And I've got a copy of it here too. It is an extraordinary photograph. Really,
Yeah.
really great
It
photograph
It
of
is.
really,
her.
really
It
is.
And
really
then there's
is.
so many of others of her wading around in the mud in France, and there are pictures of smelling flowers and doing kinds of stuff in England. We have
Yeah.
a lot of memories there.
I love all the pictures of her in the book because especially in East Anglia, it looks like she's not in a place where she's, you know, essentially feeding people that are coming back from combat missions. It looks
Yeah.
like she's just on sort of some sort of peaceful excursion, especially the pictures of her in the aero clubs.
Yeah.
And
Yes,
in fact, all of the pictures, it doesn't look like she's there to help win the war. She's just
she's just
having a
there.
great time.
Yes, exactly. But people would tell her extraordinary things, and
Mm.
she was every man's mother, sister, aunt,
Yeah.
whoever.
Yeah.
And they took it very seriously. They would come in and talk to these ladies, and she would see them and do things with them. And I'm not so sure she ever dated officially dated anybody that was a member of a flight crew.
Yeah.
I think that was a smart decision.
Yeah, I can
Mm.
But
imagine
there
why.
were there were others, and she talked about, everybody from um, um, the adjutant at the 95th Bomb Group to a guy at
Mhm.
the 9th Bomber Command they called Big Barn Smell. He was an enormous guy with
Yeah.
superhuman strength that would drink like crazy. And she was able to go and say, I think it's time for you to leave. And he would leave, apologize, and leave very quietly.
Yeah.
But she always thought he was going to kill somebody, so she'd get him out of the club as fast as she could.
Yeah. I also really liked how she would start a letter and then not finish it for 4 days because she had to stop what she was doing
Yes,
whenever somebody
exactly.
came
There
Yeah.
could
into
be
the
three or
club.
four different dates on a letter. Yes,
Yeah.
right.
I
Yeah.
think there's one that begins on the 5th of the month and she doesn't eventually finish it until like the 20th of the month or something. And every headline's like, sorry, someone came in. Sorry, I had to go to
Yeah.
bed.
Yes.
I think that's what I love so much about wartime letters. I mean, wartime letters have to be some of my favorite type of historical, you know,
Yeah.
documents to go through because it really gives you a through the eyes firsthand account of what these men and women were going through. But the Red Cross letters are just some of my favorites. I mean, and it
Mm.
really does show how they would drop everything to help somebody. I'm in the middle of writing to my mother, but you need me. Okay, I'm gonna pack it in for
That was
tonight and
their
take care of
job.
you. That
Their
was their
their job
job.
wasn't to write their mother, it was to be
Yeah.
there for the benefit of the men.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
And the
it
fact
was
that they
very,
were so censored too.
Yeah.
And then she began to self-censor, but even through that, you have no idea if she's sad, if she's sick, if
No.
she's
no, never
They
talked
never let
about
on. No.
never let them see you cry. And I think
Yeah.
that counted for not just the men, but it counted for family too. You are
I am
overseas and don't want to
positive
worry them.
I'm positive she had some very emotional moments over there,
Oh,
not just on
absolutely.
VE Day or VJ Day. I'm sure there are times she just collapsed.
Yeah.
But that wasn't that wasn't like my mother to write that kind of thing. She would bottle that up pretty tightly.
Mm.
And there really, there was it was a limit as to what she could do. And even after we had taken Europe, um, France, for instance, she really couldn't write much about the stuff that she was doing. It
Right.
wasn't until afterwards that she began to speak more about it, where she had been and the stuff she had done,
Mm.
and so on and so forth. And I go back to that letter of May 16th, which I think is a classic letter. This is her drive with Jack Zeltner, who was her lover. By the way, I found Jack Zeltner's son, and we had a couple of
Yeah.
very nice conversations.
That's
But
nice.
he, that trip was the first time she, I think, really opened up as stuff that she had seen that were clearly very war oriented. The
Yeah.
prisoners
Yeah.
escaping, people getting away from the Russians, stopping in Czechoslovakia because the Russians were on the other side of the river, and so on and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
That I think is probably my favorite one of all
Mm.
the letters.
Yeah.
Although, as I tell everybody that reads the book, you don't want to bounce around with these letters, and you are going to get bored with some of them because how much interesting is it to read about the fact that she wants her parents to send her a girdle or a can of sardines? But
I
if
love
you,
that though. I love those.
They're
but
so real.
actually, yes, they are real. But what you may have noticed in this book is the tone of her letters and her sophistication, especially as she eases into her job and the things that she's doing. This is a 26-year-old who was 28 when she came home, but she had aged in maturity by scores of years more than that.
Yeah.
And I think
Absolutely.
you see that in reading this. And this is where I say getting home and not being able to continue doing the things that she had done, or I should probably say it would be been extraordinarily difficult for her due to have that same kind of responsibility. Um, that had to be very deflating, I think,
Yeah,
Oh yeah.
absolutely.
you know. And coming home, there's a wonderful book that came out last year called The Wounded Generation.
Mm,
If you haven't read it, I'd urge you to do so. It was what it was like for the American men and women coming back, and the black soldiers coming back, which is a whole different story.
yeah.
And they clearly were a wounded generation. It was difficult. It didn't make any difference who you were. It was difficult.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Um, another, this one's kind of a silly question I had. Did she remain an animal loving person for the rest of her life because of the zoo of pets that she seemed to
Oh
collect
my
during her time in
gosh.
England?
Well, we had, when I was born, she already had a dachshund named Heidi. Uh,
Oh,
and before she died and before she went into Alzheimer's care, my brother had to take her cat and give it to somebody else. We always had pets. We had dogs, we had cats, we had a chipmunk for about an hour before it died. No,
oh
a
God.
groundhog for about an hour before it died. Chipmunk, squirrel,
Oh my gosh.
you name it.
Wow.
We would just
Wow.
collect them. You know, a thrush named Brownie who died, but
Jesus.
we we had. I can't even begin to count the number of pets we
How
had
many
as a kid.
pets?
Oh my
I
gosh.
I I really love that, and I found that
Oh
so
yeah.
comical that every other letter it's, oh, I got a new cat today, and this
Yes.
guy just brought me a cat. Oh, now I have a puppy, by the way. And then she had to give the puppy up because she's moving somewhere else. And then
Well,
she
you know,
says that she'll be animal free for a little bit, and then 2 days later, someone else has brought her
gives you
another
something.
animal.
Well, her last animal over there was a dog of
Yeah.
unknown breed named VD.
Yes.
Two soldiers gave it to her. Its name was VD, and as she expeditiously told her parents, she changed the name to Victory Day.
Yeah, that would be very
Yeah.
smart.
And she really wanted to bring that dog home, but then realized it would be impossible. So she left
Yeah.
the dog with one of the guys on the base in Villa Coublay.
Yeah.
It's really a testament, though, also to how therapeutic these animals were to the
Oh
men
God,
and the
yes.
women living there.
Oh,
Oh my
they
gosh,
all loved it.
it's almost every bomber group or every account where you read of life on base, there's pets. Who
Yep.
had a dog? Who had donkeys? Who had a
Yep.
cat? It's
Donkey's thing still throws me
the
though.
donkey thing still throws me because, yeah, those donkeys were brought back from Africa. But
It's
I
insane.
mean, there was dogs and farm life because all these bases were smack in the middle of farmland, and it really,
Yeah.
I guess, offered this taste of just regular, hey, I'm a guy with a dog and I'm taking my dog for a walk, I'm not fighting the
Yeah.
war. It was just a taste of therapy and normalcy for them. But it's still, yeah, it blows my mind just how many animals were really around for the war.
Well, war
Yeah.
is anything but normal, so you're
Yeah.
absolutely
Yeah.
right. I think
Exactly.
one of her other letters, and I can't remember where it is in there, is they snuck a goat into her room one night.
Yes.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
It's
and
like
so they
towards the
got into the room,
beginning.
and there's the goat, and there I think was the cat. Maybe the cat's name was Janie. I can't remember now.
Hmm.
Sitting there staring at this goat, side-eyed. Like, what the hell is that animal doing here? They did have a lot of fun teasing each other, and these were ways of diffusing the tension, I suppose. They would just have fun. And then because the next
Yeah.
day you didn't know whether you'd be around to have fun anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, a lot of them weren't. Uh,
Am I correct in thinking, Tim, that there was a personal connection between your mother and someone in the bomb group?
you mean somebody from home?
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, yeah, 3 to 6 bomb group. There was a fella from home that was there. Um,
Hmm.
I'd have to look up the name, but there was a fellow that was home from there, and he was married to a friend of my mother's, and so
That's it.
she knew
Yes.
him and his wife. He had a slight wound. He got a piece of plexiglass or something in his eye, but that was fixed,
Yeah.
and he did his things. My mother was thrilled when it was time for him to go home. She was
Yeah, I
scared
remember
to
reading
death
that.
that he would
Yeah.
Hmm.
die, you know. And of
Yeah.
course, you would be with every time somebody went up, you were scared to death.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Not only are you meeting all these new people, these young boys, and you are essentially sending them up for potential death, having a personal connection like that, as in your friend's husband is
Yes.
there, that must have been absolutely
Yeah.
terrifying for her.
Well, she went when she was in France after the war was over. She visited two grave sites
Hmm.
of
Mm,
husbands of friends of hers that had died. One in the Bulge,
yeah.
maybe both in the Bulge. I can't remember now.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, that had to be very difficult.
Oh
And then
yeah.
she met a nurse, somebody she knew from Providence in Paris. And this is the first hint she gives of drinking being an issue. And she mentions it obliquely through the letters. In this one, she said, she's got the same problem as I do. We can't seem to walk past the bar.
Mm,
And then in another one, she mentioned that Jack Zeltner had cut her off a couple of times.
right.
So that's an indication that there was something coming for her.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, and once again, I completely understand it. I mean,
Yeah.
Yeah.
as I hope you all don't know it, but growing up with an alcoholic in the family is not fun. And it would
Hmm.
have been very easy for me, since I often was the brunt of some of her anger. It would have been very easy for me to walk away, and just say, screw it, somebody else can deal with this woman. But in the back of my mind, there was no question there was something there that I wasn't seeing. And I didn't realize what I wasn't seeing until after
Hmm.
I found the letters. And
Yeah.
that's when I
Yeah.
really began to know. But by the time she died, we had for a couple of decades, I suppose, we'd come to peace with one another, and it was always fun to visit her and so on and so forth.
Yeah. Do
Yeah.
you have a favorite letter from all of them? I know we've mentioned the 16th of
The
May
May
one. Do you
16th
May
have,
letter.
16th, yeah.
yeah,
Well, there's another
Or a
one.
favorite story that she might have told you about her
yeah,
service when you were growing up.
She would tell odd stories like about the time, and this was in, I'm almost positive, in England, when a bunch of black GIs came into her canteen, and the white GIs tried to throw them out. And my mother, all of 5'4" or 5", whatever she was, basically told them if they didn't stop it, she would throw them out of the club, and she would close the club, and they wouldn't have a place to go anymore.
wow.
So
Wow.
that was it for that story. I think the diary she kept on the Queen Mary is one of
Hmm.
my favorites.
Yeah.
As you all might remember, one of her cabinet mates was Kathleen Kennedy,
Yep.
um, John Kennedy's sister, who died in 1948 in a plane crash. And the other
Yeah.
one was one of the others was Catherine Spatz, whose
Hmm.
father, Toohey Spatz, was the general that was in charge of the air war for the Allies in Africa and then came up to Europe after that.
Right.
We will
I thought
say, Tim, that the reason that we have this podcast is because we wanted to learn more about Tatty Spats. That was one of the reasons we began this.
I
It
don't know.
was just that.
My mother never mentioned her again. I have
Really?
no, what? She,
Really?
the only reason we knew about Kathleen Kennedy before we got the letters is the day
Mm,
Jack Kennedy was assassinated.
right.
We were at, I can actually send you an article I wrote about the thing.
Oh,
Uh,
yes, please.
but I got home late that day. I suppose it was probably about 5:30 or 6 in the evening, and walked in, and my parents, my two younger brothers, and a neighborhood friend were sitting there. And the neighborhood friend, who's a very nice kid and about 12 years old, I guess, made some comment about he didn't care that Kennedy was killed. And
Mm,
his now he was reflecting his fact that his parents were very conservative, but believe me, his parents didn't want the president of the United States to be killed. And my mother said,
mm,
"Oh, I liked him. I voted for him." And
mm.
I looked at her and I said, "Really?" Because at that time, I was 14. It never dawned on me that a husband and wife would vote differently in a presidential election.
Yeah.
I suppose
Yeah.
I was being groomed to be the typical American male. And
Yeah.
I said, "You what?" And she said, "Yes, I knew his sister." And I said, "Really? How did you know
Wait
her?"
a minute.
And she said,
Right.
"Well, we went to England together. We were in England during the war." So she would occasionally go down and see Kathleen. It was actually a funny story. When they first got there, they stayed at a rooming house type of thing at 12 Dover Street near Green Park. And
Mhm.
the next morning or the morning after, Kathleen said, "Hey, I'm going to Parliament as a guest." A lady asked her, "Would you like to go with me?"
Yes, I remember this.
And my mother said no. And the whole time we were growing up, she could not remember why. I now know that's the day she had her meeting. It was assigned to the 95th Bomb Group.
Hmm.
But
Yeah.
nonetheless, then she started talking about the voyage over and how they'd eat at the cabin's table and how much fun they had and so on and so forth. She would meet Kathleen in London from time to time, and then they were supposed to be in a wedding in Paris together in
Mm.
this would probably be April, I guess, April of 1945,
Hmm.
maybe March. And but the bomb group was 386 bomb group was leaving Bern-sur-Oise to go to St. Trond in Belgium that day, so she couldn't do
Yeah.
it. And I don't know that she ever saw Kathleen again after that or not.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah. That would
But
make sense.
yeah, I suspect she probably didn't. And then, of course, Kathleen stayed over there when she got married and then died
Yeah.
in
Right.
48. Yes.
Yeah. I think that's one of the more amazing stories out of the book is that instantly we see some familiar names like
Yes.
Yeah.
Kennedy and we see Tati Spats and you're like, wow,
Well, did
instantly.
you note the name Robert? I think it's Mercivy.
Yes.
Hmm.
Yeah. That's Robert Preston, who played the Music Man in the movie The Music Man.
Yeah.
Yes.
He was in an intelligence group over there. And what's amazing, she never mentioned that all these luminaries would come to the bases. Jimmy Stewart was there, and um, Greta Garbo, I think there were a whole lot of them that would come and
Yeah.
visit the bases.
Yeah.
And she, of course, as a person that was helping with social stuff, she would have met all these people. I had no idea. And the one thing she brought us up, never be a name dropper. So when all of a sudden I had a good job and I was meeting all of these people that I was meeting, don't be a name dropper. So, so I just
We,
stopped talking about it.
I don't blame you. We have to sometimes reel ourselves in too.
Yes.
Yes.
There's
No,
there's a few instances where we're like, oh, we shouldn't say anything.
well, and when
Um,
you get to my age and you come down and live in a community where everybody is very successful and you start dropping names, they all start yawning.
I just love her story so much.
yeah,
Well,
me
I can
too.
tell you, I can talk about this stuff all day long. But if anybody wants to read the book, they're probably going to get a better idea of what's going on than if I sit here and
Yeah.
expatiate about the thing all day long. So the heck with it.
Hey, no spoilers.
No, exactly.
We already reviewed it in our quarterly book club, and hopefully everyone's listened to that and taken it upon themselves to buy the book and read it
Yes.
because we, of course, gave it a rave review because we just love wartime letters so
Yeah.
much and we love this story and yeah, it's been excellent to learn about your mother and to speak to you. This has been lovely. Thank
It
you
has
Well,
so
been.
this has
much.
been a great fun. Well, thank
And
And
you guys very, very much.
thank you so much. We appreciate you
yes,
taking time
thank you
out of your day
too.
to speak with us and to share your mother's beautiful story.
Well, thank you. Thank you. She had quite an
Thank
adventure.
you so much.
Yes. So
She
long,
She
did.
sure
guys.
did.
Thank you,
Thank
everybody, for
you.
joining us, and
Bye.
we will see you all next time.
Thanks,
Bye.
everyone. Bye.
Bye.